Hey everyone, we're back for the second part of our interview with Phil Sasser. Last week we heard about the Sunday gathering, and today the featured topic is workplace evangelism. And so we draw on Phil's years as a pharmacist for these questions. So this part of the interview we're going to talk about workplace evangelism. Over the years in conversations with Phil, whether as pastors having a pastor's meeting or just informal conversation, it stood out to me that Phil is unusually able when it comes to workplace evangelism. And so I thought it would be good to ask him some questions about that, since that's where a lot of us live, just in need of help in knowing how to reach out to coworkers in different situations. So the first one's kind of a general question, but what would be some tips you have, just maybe a list of tips you have for evangelizing well in the workplace?
Well, just for the purpose of those who may not know me, I have two professions in my my life, occupationally. One is a pastor, and the other is a pharmacist. So a lot of I've done workplace evangelism in both, but I think as relating to most people, I will use my situation in a retail pharmacy for many years. And the opportunities I had to share the gospel with people. So my tips are, if it's workplace evangelism, you don't have to be in a hurry. You're probably going to see people a lot over whatever period of time you're there in that particular situation, and they're there. So you don't have to do everything at once, but it's a conversation. It's conversational, it's not confrontational. So your workplace evangelism becomes in the context of a conversation. There are many things that go into making those opportunities go well or not, but I would say this: one of the things that makes your workplace evangelism better is if you do your job well. If you don't do your job well, it's going to really be a problem for you. People don't listen to people they don't respect. And so by the way you conduct yourself, particularly in a workplace, your personal integrity, your speech, but really importantly is how well you do your job. And the manner in which you do it, that gives you a hearing. It doesn't supply the content, of course, but it does give you, it makes it easier for the other person to hear what you're saying. So you're not in a hurry. You're being a good employee, and you're being a good workmate, if that's a word for the people you work with. And I look for opportunities. Opportunities present themselves. And so, like, this is April in the year 2020. And so the conversation about death is particularly relevant. And if I were in a situation like that, I wouldn't be ashamed at all to death comes up. It's on everybody's mind, whether they talk about it or not. People are dying all around them, in a sense, maybe not closer around them, but all around our country and around the world. And so a question like, would you go to heaven if you died? That's a question that's good to ask for people to think about, because most people don't like to think about it. Pascal says Blaise Pascal, the famous French mathematician and philosopher and Christian, said that most people keep themselves amused and entertained to avoid thinking about serious issues, of which death is the most important. And but it's and I know that people are thinking about it. When they hear somebody dying, they can think, well, they were my age and they died, or they were younger than me, or at least I didn't die. But death is certainly an opportunity for discussion. And so there are things like that as well. I encourage you not to mix your politics. That's not helpful, especially in the time in which we live, which is so divisive. Don't kind of join the two, your political party and political persuasion with the gospel. That will taint the gospel and make people less willing and ready to hear it. But in a time like this, where I think the other day I was reading an article about moral outrage. People are outraged morally, and it's more common to hear those kinds of terms than any time in my life that I've seen. And one of the questions I like to ask in a situation like that is, how do you know what's right and wrong? Where do you get those?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the questions that flow out of the situation in which you find yourself, the circumstances, and asking those questions is a good conversation starter. And it's important to be a good listener as well, because if you ask questions, listen.
Yeah.
And listen carefully to what they say, particularly so you'll understand them, and also that you'll be able to contrast perhaps with the Christian position and to give them an alternative to the way they're thinking. So those are some of the things the ways that I've started, just normal conversations that you would have with anyone, but there'll be a moment. And another thing to do is to make sure that you have time for a serious conversation. It's not taking you away from what you should be doing, but it's a time when you can have that conversation, both it's appropriate to have that time, and also that you have enough time that you can have a conversation. If you've got 30 seconds, you're probably not going to be able to do that. But the whole thing about evangelism in the workplace is that you're going to be around these people a lot, so you don't have to be as quick, and you can give time and let them think about that. Give them things to think about. And like I say, do it in a conversational tone, not a confrontational tone.
So in your study over the years, any books or authors stand out as ones that you found particularly helpful in doing workplace evangelism? Personally.
Well, I studied a lot of apologetics and evangelism. Nothing about, it comes to apologetics, of course, a lot of things. People like Cornelius Van Til were incredibly helpful to me. He made me realize that everybody at some level knows there's a God. And you're not trying to convince them of something they don't know. Actually, God's made it known to him. That's what Romans chapter 1, verse 18-19 says, is that he has revealed himself to them. So his eternal attributes, and that they suppress the truth. So as I read Van Til, I realized that people do know that there's a God, and they're suppressing it. If they're not a Christian, they're suppressing it all the time. And so when I talk to them, it's not such a foreign language to them. So I've been encouraged by that particular author and others. For me, Francis Schaeffer was so very important in my formation in the 70s, and his book, his trilogy, The God Who Is There, He Is There, and He Is Not Silent, An Escape from Reason, in which he really he develops this notion of conversational apologetics, conversational way of sharing the gospel. So when I think of, those are the two big writers that have influenced me. And there's a dozen others, from Norman Geisler at one end to Greg Bonson on the other, and a lot in between.
Good. Well, thanks, Phil. Thanks for taking some time out of your day and helping our people and helping us to think better about evangelism. So we appreciate that.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.